Hey guys, I'm Chris Buck and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks. And this week, taking a look at the Gibson ES-335 and why it might just be the greatest guitar ever made. Okay, so the eagle-eyed amongst you probably will have noticed that, technically speaking, the guitar in the introduction clip that you just saw is actually an ES-355, not an ES-335, but we're going to let that slide, primarily for the fact that, save for some fancy binding and an added varitone that I don't use all that frequently, it's essentially the same guitar. And for the fact that that clip actually has a relevance to today's video and really got me thinking. It was a festival that I played with Cardinal Black last weekend. Incidentally, we just announced a big run of UK tour dates as well as a few European ones. Put all of the relevant dates and links down in the description box below, but if you want to come and see us on the road, it'd be great to actually meet some of you in person. But as I said, I was playing this festival last weekend, during the course of which I found myself absent-mindedly looking down at my guitars and came to the conclusion that, without really putting too much conscious thought process into it, I'd actually selected, albeit for an hour's slot, two 335s, or ES-style guitars, shall we say. I guess those of you familiar with the channel will know that I tend not to play 335s all that frequently, but to be honest, when I have, they tend to be guitars that I found myself kind of scratching around on the back of the sofa, trying to figure out if I can desperately afford them in one way, shape or another. And for all of my Les Paul or Revstar or Tele or Strat chasing, arguably so more than any other guitar type, when I do click with the 335, really click with it, which kind of got me thinking, is it the greatest guitar design ever? Now, before we delve into the reasons why this may be the case, it's worth a very quick overview of the history of the ES-335 and an understanding of its place in the great pantheon of electric guitars. In 1958, to say that Fender were dominating would be something of an understatement. In 1950, they'd introduced the Broadcaster, very quickly renamed the Telecaster, and then very swiftly followed it up in 1954 with the introduction of the Stratocaster. So that was a landmark 4 years. As I said, would be something of an understatement. Two of the most iconic designs, not necessarily just guitar designs, of all time. Now, comparatively, Gibson had tried to keep up with the introduction of the Les Paul in 1952, but unlike the Strat and the Tele, which have remained relatively unchanged during their 70-plus year lifespan, the Les Paul was dogged initially by neck angle problems and then just general playability issues, and in the years that followed underwent an array of changes to try and get it to the point where it was competitive. By 1957, Gibson had settled on a stop bar tailpiece and the new PAF, patent applied for, humbucking pickups, but with the gold finish that had been in place since 52, safe to say the Les Paul wasn't exactly flying off the shelves. And of course, in 1958, they revamped the Les Paul again with a now infamous sunburst finish. Now we know amongst the rarest and most valuable guitars in existence, but at the time, an unmitigated commercial flop. However, something interesting was happening around this time, as Gibson noticed that, despite their best efforts to keep up with Fender's solid-body new electric guitars, they actually noticed an uptake in the sales of their more traditional hollow-body models, like the Birdland, and thus their answer to this futuristic versus traditional dilemma was semi-hollow-body, double cutaway, thin-line electric guitar, which then Gibson president Ted McCarty explains. I came up with the idea of putting a block of wood down the middle, like a solid body guitar, but with wings. The block made it stiffer, so it had a brighter tone than an acoustic would. It looked like an acoustic, but it wasn't. It was an electric. The idea, although principally quite similar to Les Paul's log guitar design of the 1940s, was ultimately unique to Gibson, and the first ES-335 rolled off the production line on April 21st, 1958. The Sunburst model retailed at $267.50, while the natural blonde finish sold for $282.50. Unlike the Les Paul, the 335 was near enough an instant success, and Gibson capitalised on this with the introduction of 3 associated models: the stereo ES-345, the high-end ES-355, and the entirely hollow ES-330. It's somewhat ironic that after years of trying to chase down Fender's success with a solid body guitar, Gibson finally hit their stride with a guitar that was actually much more reminiscent of their archtop history. And without the success of the 335, who knows where Gibson would be today. So why a 335? And why not a Les Paul or an SG or a Flying V or an Explorer or any other Gibson humbucker or equipped guitar for that matter? Put simply, nothing sounds like a 335. Unplugged, it's loud and resonant and airy and really reminiscent of an acoustic guitar in many ways. But of course that centre block of maple, very much grounding it in that strident mid-range that you might associate with something like a Les Paul or an SG. It's almost a cliche, but it really is the best of both worlds. That arrowhead, sharp-shooting, pinpoint accuracy of that strident mid-range with those PAFs in particular, but with the openness, airiness, warmth and clarity and top-end sparkle that you get with a hollow body. It's a sound like no other, and as such, covers a hell of a lot of ground. It speaks volumes that Larry Carlton, aka Mr. 335, upon looking for a guitar that could do it all, from bebop to blues to jazz to fusion to rock, turned to a 335, as he explains in this next clip.
And for me, I wanted to get a guitar that could cover a lot of bags, so I didn't always have to switch to a bebop guitar for this, a blues guitar for that. And this one covers most of the bags that I want to play or was called on to play. So that's how I ended up picking the 335.
So in the beginning, it was just kind of a pragmatic thing about not wanting to schlep a ton of gear to sessions.
Yeah. Although I ended up carrying everything, but this one seemed to cover most, so I didn't have to keep pulling a new guitar out.
Yeah.
There really is a versatility to the 335 that you would probably struggle to find in nearly any other guitar design, and its exhaustive list of exponents over the years really is testament to that, from Eric Clapton to B.B. King, Larry Carlton, Ritchie Blackmore, Johnny Marr, Otis Rush, Freddie King, Noel Gallagher, Alex Lifeson, John Mayer, Bernard Butler, Chris Cornell, Dave Grohl, Chuck Berry, Warren Haynes, Joey Santiago, Eric Johnson, Roy Orbison to Marty McFly. From grunge to jazz to fusion to heavy metal to hard rock, the 335 literally can and has done it all. But is that enough? Is that incredible level of versatility really strong enough argument to make a case for it being the greatest guitar design of all time? For all of its innumerable good points, I think you probably struggle to make a cohesive argument that the 335 is anywhere near approaching a perfect guitar. A few years ago, I bought an ES-339, which you can kind of think of as a scaled-down version of the 335, primarily for the fact that I wanted something with the tonality and vibe of a 335 that was a little bit more comfortable to play, at least around the house. It can be a little bit cumbersome on occasion. I'm neither big nor small, I guess, at 6 foot, but there's no denying that in certain scenarios, the size of a 335 can present itself as something of an unwieldy beast. Also, they're a bloody nightmare to work on. If ever you've tried changing a pickup or even a pot on a 335, you'll very quickly find yourself wishing that you just dabbled in thoracic surgery instead. Also, because of its semi-hollow construction, feedback can be an issue. Depending on the levels of gain you use, or the size of stage, or the kind of overall volume at which you play at, can present itself as a problem. Admittedly, nowhere near as badly as, say, a Casino or a 330, but something definitely worth mentioning. And then lastly, because of the craftsmanship and hours and skill involved in creating a set neck, semi-hollow electric guitar like a 335, you're arguably a little bit more dependent on getting a Monday morning job than you are a Friday afternoon job. I'm not going to dwell on Gibson's well-publicised, some less than consistent era, shall we say, which in fairness, every guitar manufacturer will go through at some point in their lifetime. But as much as it's fair to say I've played some astoundingly good 335s, I've also played some not-so-good 335s. A little while back, I made a video putting a case forward for the humble Telecaster actually being the greatest guitar design of all time, and for the reasons I laid out in that video, I'll link above if you want to check it out. I think, on balance, I probably stand by that call, but there's no denying that for all of its quirks, the 335 is one of the most iconic, brilliant guitar designs of all time, and purely for the fact that it still bridges that gap so effortlessly between hollow body and solid body in a way that no guitar has done before or since. If it's not the greatest guitar design ever, it surely deserves to be in that question. Let you guys decide in the comments as to what you think the greatest guitar design of all time is. But as ever, I'm Chris Buck. This is Friday Fretworks. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe, hit the bell icon if you haven't already, and I shall see you next week for another episode. Cheers, guys. Take care. See you soon.